I am so excited for the guest that we have joining us in studio today is the artist, the singer herself, Lyndsey. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm very good.
All right, nice. So we're going to put the spotlight on you a little bit. All right, so first, before we get into, because I know you have a little song for us that we're going to play at the end of the segment, right? But first things first, tell us about you. Tell us about Lyndsey.
I consider myself a creative individual, and that creativity spans far beyond just singing. I like to enjoy craft. I like to enjoy painting, in any way, writing. So I consider myself a very creative individual who enjoys spreading some sort of positivity in some way or in every way that I can to people, whether that makes them believe in themselves or encourages them through my work. So that's what I'd say.
Nice. And you sort of come from a musical family, if I'm not correct.
Yes, I have 6 siblings, and
wow.
Yeah.
That's getting bunch of family.
I heard that all my life growing
really?
up. So,
oh,
yeah,
gosh.
totally fine. That's a compliment. But yes, all 7 of us sing, and it was just normal in our household growing up, really and truly.
Were your parents singers as well?
They sing, but they're not like an avid singer.
Okay,
Yeah.
No problem. So all of your siblings can sing, but you've taken it further into making a whole career out of it.
Yes, I have.
And I'm sure you would have gotten support from them as well.
Of course, yeah.
Right? What was that transition like for you to actually take it a lot further?
Well, I grew up in a choir, the Love Movement Choir, under Bernard Lachlan Scott, and all of us went through there as well. But after a while, if you could relate or if you can't, growing up in a choir, if you feel like you want to break out on your own as an independent artist, you want to put your voice out there, that was my path, I believe. Yes, during the choir, I did have opportunities to have solos and be able to be solo on the stage, but it's different when you want to bring out what's inside of you, what touches you personally, music-wise. So after leaving the choir, I said, I really want to take that path of going out there on my own as an independent artist, and that's where it started.
Now, it's interesting because, Trinidad and Tobago, on one hand, has a limited music industry. It's centered around carnival. You yourself, you've spent time in that space as well, right? Yeah. Did you feel that to some extent is somewhat limiting because commercially you do need to pay the bills if you want to be a professional artist, and a lot of artists I find, even the ones in the calypso soca space, they have other genres they want to touch on, get influenced by, but also go back to, not just kind of be kind of temporarily take a few bits but then come back. They want to branch out more. You find it's kind of limiting now because you like to do a lot of art forms. I've seen your sketch parts and stuff before.
Yes.
That we don't necessarily have that space for creatives to really get something out there sometimes.
Yes, I do believe so. And it's funny you should say that because it was soca that I started to branch out with. And that was actually very strategic for me. I had the opportunity, I was very blessed. A popular soca producer, reached out and asked me if I wanted to sing on a song, because at that time I was now on Instagram, now trying to put myself out there singing random things, and he reached out. So from that, I had the option in mind. I personally do not consider myself a soca artist. I love soca, but I don't consider myself a soca artist, but yet, with what he was offering, I knew that that would be a window, a step in the door for exposure, which is really what I wanted to get to be able to do my own music. So my first release was, public release was in 2019 on the radio, in the classic rhythm called Private Party.
Which I have heard on the radio.
Yes, still hearing it, praise God. And that was my step into getting to expose myself as an artist and to get to know more people, socialize and network really and truly. And from there, after that release, the following year, I released my own productions.
Right.
So.
But that's the next question, because when we did Carnival, one of the things that was cool was when we would have the first group of guests. It was a whole group, and they would all be trading, phone numbers, following each other on Instagram. So, I'm left to wonder to what extent does the whole creative industry, it's maybe not as well connected as we might think, you know, I don't know, was it easy to get connections? Was a lot of people ready to collaborate, or did it feel as though like everybody is still kind of operating on their own somewhat?
Well, yeah, it is. There's a caveat to that. With soca, if you want to do soca music, I think it's easy to connect. It's difficult. It has been difficult for me, which is why I decided to produce my own things, because I felt as though, no offense to anybody, everybody has their own sound and their own talent, but I wasn't getting what I wanted, what I was hearing in my head from somebody else. So I took the step to do it on my own.
This actually mirrors, because we had the NPO in a previous episode, and they were talking about the fact that to get their live sound, and sound engineers to kind of understand that they don't necessarily have people that understand their genre. And I said, well, the same thing for choirs. You know, most sound engineers, it's the soca space, that's the big elephant in the room that everybody is geared to professionally. So anything outside of that is just so much in its infancy that we tend to, you know, there's so much, the converse side of the argument is there's so much potential room if anyone could figure out and break through with the space and to try to get it commercialized.
I was not going to say, I think it exists, but the issue is it known? You know, outside of the fact that I'm aware that a lot of producers tend to not be known in the spotlight. It's usually the artists, and the writers and the producers tend to stay behind closed doors. Now I see them coming out more, but I'm sure that there are producers who are into everything other than soca, but at the same time, maybe there should be a platform, more platforms or more exposure on them to come out, so that artists who are not maybe aligned with soca can see that, hey, I can work with this person if I want to do pop, I can work with this person if I want to do, you know, hip hop, whichever one. So
now, one thing that I've been hearing you saying, and to that point, what I heard was, you didn't hear the opportunity does come. At least there is some, at least there is some foundation. Part of that experience, I want to mention really quickly, you and your sisters competed in music festival like back.
Yes. Yes.
Back in something years, right? And I saw the article from that year, and you all were the first to bring, it was a family category, and you all were the first to bring contemporary contemporary pop to that category. And music festival it has expanded now, but back in those days it was usually just classical and folk.
Yes.
Right. So that was interesting that you all again took that time. Again, you all created your own opportunity, and you all went to. What was the feedback like after that performance, if you remember?
Well, in the competition there is no initial feedback. But I mean, we won, so I guess it was good.
And I was there. They beat us.
Do soca and calypso in the setting of an orchestra, and then Sean made the point that, okay, now whoever is in the audience, you don't know what inspiration may have been sparked. And even though it may not be exactly what's there, then they're thinking, okay, if they can do this, maybe I can do.
It's a possibility,
Yeah, maybe I can do something else.
Well, I mean, I guess we spoke about the limitations of the industry, but kind of coming back down to Lyndsey, the artist.
Good question. To answer your question, I would say that the individual has to really want what they want.
Right.
Because you can sit and make every excuse possible, but like you said, it's also wide open for anything that you need to do. So you have to be willing to, you know, step outside of your comfort zone. The norm that you may see, okay, so you have to go to a producer, you have to try and see if they will put your name somewhere. You know, you have to be that person to overstep certain boundaries and be bold and be passionate and driven. And that will come to, you know, building a team is important. People who are on the same level, same mindset of what you believe in, your goals.
Same vision.
Correct.
So, yeah.
And that will help definitely, you know, even if you want to go and try and get sponsorship for a small show that is about the genre that you want to sing. But I think, and I could say for myself, at times, you know, you kind of doubt yourself a little bit. Do they really want to hear that? Are they really going to put money into that? You know, it's not soca, it's not this, it's not that. But you have to get those limiting beliefs outside of your head and just go for it, because you will unfortunately sit down there for the rest of your life thinking coulda, woulda, shoulda, but never did. So I think you can look at it as exciting because now you have the opportunity to be the first in something that's the country hasn't seen.
Most people don't realize when something is happening until after the fact you reflect, right? Like, did it ever hit you that if you manage to succeed and because it's a tall order, right?
Yeah,
to be the first. It's not easy. But then if you do succeed in that aspect, right? Regardless of the music itself, if you actually penetrate something new and establish it or help to establish it, does that thought ever cross your mind?
It does. And even to the effect that, okay, maybe I may not be successful in what I want to do, but at least I would have paved the way for somebody who had similar dreams and aspirations that I would have had. And to me, that's fulfilling as well, you know. It's not just about, oh, I need to be the person, but can we create opportunities?
Somebody has to understand that the process, you might not be there for the end with all the big rewards, but at the very least, you could be celebrated for being brave for the beginning. But then but specifically for Lyndsey, if it's not soca, what is it? You know?
What is my genre?
What is your genre? As an artist, what speaks to you? Because that's the obvious question, right? You know, you ask the singer, you ask the musician, what is your genre? Or genres?
I like to say contemporary.
Okay.
But that's the beauty, I think, in my creativity. I don't stick to any, it's what makes me feel. So that can be, I love to listen to dancehall, I love to listen to soca, R&B, pop, anything that makes me feel, and I like to take elements of those things into my song. The things in those songs that make me feel good or make me, you know, happy, I try to take those elements and create my music. So some of my songs, I think like Guilty or Self-Sabotage, those songs, you can hear Kaiso in one, you can hear R&B in the other, but you know, that's my creativity, it's who I am. So to say, just the other day I was watching a live on Instagram with some soca producers, and the discussion was soca beyond carnival, trying to create soca for, you know, after the fetting season. And I had put forward a question in the chat, you know, what about creating a new genre that has its roots in soca for those periods, you know? And to me, that's like, why can't you do that? You know, soca is great. I'm not saying that you don't have to stick to it, but you can create a new genre. Just like soca was what, Kaiso and reggae, or
it's a mixture of African and Indian
and
rhythms.
it had its roots in the same way that was created. You can now create, because it's a brand new world that we live in with, you know, advances and so on. So something like that, you know, and that goes back to what you were saying in terms of, yeah, there could be challenges, but you have to be willing to try something, step out, see if it works, you know, so.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I've always thought soca, for me, soca can be played anywhere and anytime. You know, we have even the parang soca that we have sometimes. But I think mentally we're so associated with a season, we can't always picture it outside of the season, not realizing that I can play, but you can play, because soca has its elements, it has its rhythmic elements, it has its melodic elements and the instruments, right? Exactly. So in terms of but the lyrical content just so happened to be centered around carnival.
I think that's the main issue, right? That if it's already road and too much about a carnival subject, then it gets weird. And there's an incentive during the carnival period. Fets play soca till people fed up with soca. And then summertime comes now and dancehall comes back into the clubs, although there isn't really much clubs left, right? And it's a different, it's a different part. Well, Trinbago hasn't really been on rap, radio-wise, but in the party scene, it goes to dancehall, and you still have fets, you still have band launches, and all of that from as early as August, July, but then of course you have the real heavy fetting season just before Christmas. We take the break for Christmas, and then we go into it after Christmas. So I guess it just comes down to the lyrics.
It does, and just to go in on what you said there. Now, it feels like it's carnival all year round, because obviously all the other islands have their different days in which carnival. So the soca artists will most likely constantly be creating But yes, in the discussion I talked about, they did say that obviously the lyrics would have to change, and I think like Patrice Roberts' Anxiety was an example of soca not trying to take on too much of, you know, wine and jam so that you could relate to it after the carnival.
Or even a different type of party song, like a summer song.
Yeah.
Because Cass had a song, right, a while ago?
Release an album,
No, a while ago. Oh, well, yeah. No, but a specific, it was something, the topic was summertime, I can't remember, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like stuff like that where you could, if we kind of branched out maybe the seasonal aspect of soca and not just kind of make everything implied towards carnival, it could still be our parties, just have a different feel-good attitude.
Yeah. I think one artist that I think did it, not probably the first, but one noticeable was Nadia Batson's So Long. Right, it was literally talking about, oh my gosh, I have not seen you in so long. Right, and that's more of a general, like you had that, those sort of moments happen all the time. So it's not necessarily about when I meet you on the road, that sort of thing, but it's like, oh my gosh, so long I see you, that sort of thing, right? And one of the things that you touched on in explaining and giving the advice to the younger artists, you said. You talked about excuses, right? Making excuses. One of your first releases was actually called No Excuses.
The first production, right? No Excuses.
And I mean, if you listen, I implore you, go and listen to the lyrical content. It's great. And I noticed that you were either talking to somebody or talking to yourself in some ways. And I like that. And you also said, if you're not, it's something that I always tell people, if you're not doing anything, then you're guaranteed to fail.
Of course.
Right? At least if you try and try and try, there is a chance to,
There's a chance, yeah.
Yeah? So we're going to come to the song in a sec. Tell us about your newest release this year.
My latest release is called My Plea. And it was written, yes, as a result of the unfortunate state of our country right now, but also because of how a situation where crime personally affected my family. So it is a plea, hence the reason why it's a very, very short song. When I produced it, I did create a version that had a lot of percussion and, you know, things that would make you move, but it did not, it didn't grasp what I was trying to bring out. So I stripped it all the way back, and you will hear just vocals and acoustic, basically. And that was to generate and create the effect that I was trying to bring, which is that, you know, when you go through, I hope you don't have to, but when you do go, you do go through an experience where crime has personally affected you, it's in your quiet moment, you know, in your room, talking to the Lord, that you plead, like, you know, please just bring back my country how it's supposed to be. You kind of block out all the noise, and it's just you and your conversation with God asking for a change. Because yes, we do have the power in us to change, and we need to recognize that power and responsibility. But that was what the song was about. It's a simple plea to a cry in all of the noise that's around us, a simple voice, a simple cry.
As an artist, do you think that more artists should potentially touch on this subject? Because right now, you know, from where I sit, my main show is a political show, so I'm like constantly just watching things. And I'm basically like, you know, forcing a smile and trying not to panic. Sometimes it feels like that, like that's what life is eventually gonna come to. And I mean, is it that artists don't want to do it? They don't maybe feel the need to do it? Or maybe we've just gotten so complacent? Because I guess the news is not enough. I think people now are going to ignore the news, whereas a message like what you've put out, something that will not necessarily force you to confront it, but it will present it to you in a way, an emotional way that in one way might kind of soften the blow, but in another way kind of make it undeniable.
Yeah.
You know, when you hear it, it probably will bring up memories for those who have also had to suffer through that. And you can't blame the song for that.
Yeah.
You know, rather now you're listening to the plea. What are you going to do after you hear the plea? And I don't know if maybe I'm putting too much responsibility on other artists to say y'all should also have something too.
Yeah, I was going to say, can't speak for other artists
Right.
because at the end of the day, as a creative, you want to put out what you think is important at the point in time for what's going on in your life. Not saying that they may not consider that crime and all of this is not important, but I don't know, what their road is. But for me, I have a responsibility in myself that I feel I want to put it out to the public to, as you rightly said, y'all, this is serious, and that's what I can do. It would be great if other artists who have a lot more power in terms of reach can do that. I think recently, I could be wrong, a popular soca artist did put out one talking about, the situation, and I think people are doing it in their own way, but I would like to hope that it's not going to be as a result of them experiencing it firsthand that they will then do it. But sometimes that's what it has to take for some people to do it. And other times, some people, like you said rightly, don't really want to focus on that negativity and they want to try and put out positivity and a different spin. And that's good too because, both hands need to clap. So.
Powerful message. Lyndsey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.